Welcome, and thanks for joining us today. This podcast is designed to help us understand and love better those around us who have made religious choices different than what we expected or would have chosen for them. I'm your host, Cherie Best, and I have here with me today Jeff Lindhart. Though Jeff was raised in a religious family, he didn't believe in God. There came a point where he found God, joined the church, then got excommunicated and rejoined again. It's been a journey. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about how your experience was growing up in a religious family.
The first things that come to my mind when you ask me that question, that's kind of a broad question, but it was difficult. My years growing up were difficult. And I believe that it was just the stigma of being in Utah. I remember as a little boy, very, very clearly that I had some friends that weren't, back then we called them LDS people or Mormons. And we weren't supposed to play with those individuals. They saw a different view in life. They were outcasts. We were not supposed to be around them. And so I, growing up, already had some kind of thought process in my head that there was something about this religion that we were better than anybody else. Nobody else was better than us. As I gone through life as a little boy, it seems like that I didn't believe in it. It wasn't the fact that I didn't believe in God. I just knew God didn't have to be in my life. What I wanted to be able to accomplish and achieve was my own doing. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could believe in whatever, I could do whatever and make whatever happen. And so as I'm going through life, being raised in the gospel, I just went through the emotions. I remember being baptized, but I don't remember being baptized. I know that at 8 years old, I was baptized because it says that on the records of the church. I know when I, 12 years old, I became a deacon, but all that stuff was a fog to me. I did not care about those requirements. Didn't care about any stances, any idea of being able to put myself in a box. You had to be a certain way, act a certain way to be able to do a certain result. And when people started putting me in a box or controlling me, that's when I fought against it, or I dug in my heels. I didn't want to move. I didn't want those guys to tell me what I could and couldn't do. And the last thing I wanted to do is have some figment of my imagination or my parents' imagination tell me what to do. You know, I got to go and get ready for Sunday, and I got to go pass the sacrament, and I got to make sure that I don't, I'm kind to my brothers and sisters. And I'm going, yeah, let me just be me. And I was being pushed and forced to do these kind of things. But it's not just because of the religion, but I was just forced to do everything. Everything that I had to do, I was forced to do. And so I dug in my heels a lot.
So as you became a teenager and you get some autonomy going, what did you do? What happened?
And so since my dad was a bishop and he was very religious, came from a religious background, like you introduced me in, and into the podcast. I did come from a religious family. We did pray. We did have family home meeting. He was a bishop. And I fought tooth and nail on it. Well, he's bigger than I am. He is a strong guy. I grew up on a dairy farmer. He's got a dairy farmer statue. He's got hands that are like baseball gloves. And I remember that we went toe to toe together. Well, I went toe to him. In other words, I hit him as hard as I could. And he didn't even bat an eye. And he looked at me dead square in the eye and says, "You don't want to hit me. You don't want to go down that road." But that's the kind of relationship that my dad I had because he was forced. Everything that I did was forced. And I never did ever want to learn how to do it on my own because I was forced so much. I did the opposite. Whatever they wanted me to do, I rebelled. And I rebelled hard. And so when I was a teenager, I got to the point where as soon as I could get out, as soon as I could get out of that prison box. I was absolutely in a prison box. Everything that they were asking me to do, I did not want to do. And as soon as I was able to leave at 17 years old, I left. And I went and my first thing I did is I joined the Army. Went to base camp, boot camp, and I tried that for 6 months and got kicked out of basic training. How do you get kicked out of basic training? Well, if you want to get kicked out of basic training, I've got the secrets to do that. But I was able to do those kind of things because, again, I got into something that I thought was going to be what I wanted, and they started telling me what to do again. Well, I'm very, very strong-minded and strong-willed that I just dug my heels in the ground, and I got kicked out of basic training. So everything happened in life that I just kept getting and fighting against, that people wouldn't let me be me, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was putting so much conscious or so much energy into what I didn't want to do. I never had any growth about what I wanted to do. I was stopping all these people trying to control me, not just asking the question, what do I want? It is so bizarre, so interesting how my life has grown up to where I'm at right now, to where I just fought against things that I didn't want and not ever ask myself, what do I want? And since I was so strong of a personality, that's all I focused on, and that's all I got, is I don't want things this way, and I got more of what I don't want to have. So when I moved out of the house, I went to basic training. I did that for 6 months. That didn't work. I came home, realized that nothing has changed yet. So I left again, and I became a contractor. What I mean by that is I started working in construction, trying to get a job somewhere. And I just bounced around from state to state, and it was everybody else's problem. It was everybody else's problem because everybody else wanted me to do something I didn't want to do. Now, it sure sounded like a good idea when we started construction, but the things that they wanted me to do, I didn't want to do. So I was what was called back then, terminology was a gypsy carpenter. I would go from company to company to company and hire whoever, work for whoever would hire me. And then when I ran out of those contractors in that state, I moved to another state, thinking that it was those people's problem because I wasn't getting what I wanted. And so I can see as a young age now that I started something in my life that just kept, they got my result that I wanted in my life, because I just wanted I just didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want, and whatever they were offering, I didn't want after time. So it was amazing how I fought so against that and got the result of getting out of a lot of job offers that I could have probably been very, very successful in. But I'm going off a topic, getting back to the church. I had some brothers and sisters. I had one sister, 7 brothers. As a family member growing up, I left the church at 17. Or not left the church, but I never did ever have a testimony for that point in time, but I left the gospel, left it behind, and didn't have to go to church anymore. Was on my own to-do list, and went around and did all this stuff that I just explained to you on. But I found happiness. I found momentary happiness. I found things that made me happy at the moment. And when you go on that thought process of trying to find things that make you happy, you're having happy moments, but you're not kicking against them because it's your own idea that you want to do it. I wasn't trying to force myself to do something I wanted to do, but it was empty. I was feeling empty. Now, I didn't know that at the time that I was feeling empty. I would just call that as a hangover, thinking that I was just not happy because of what I just went through for the weekend. But the cycle happened over and over and over again, and I didn't ever realize what it was, because every time I'm out of state and I'm working at these jobs out of state, and every once in a while I'd come home to the family, and my brothers were all grown up. I'm grown up. Nobody's at home. But I kept running into the brothers that meant to me the most while I was growing up. And he just kept saying to me, yeah, if you want a better life, just get on your knees and pray. And that happened to me for years. He would say that, he'd make that comment, and I would just brush it off. And the first time he made that comment, I kind of dug my heels in. And the second, third, it just kind of kept getting softer and softer. Well, time went on, and we're fast forwarding pretty fast. But the childhood was rough. My teenage years were rough for the gospel. Could care less about it. My college years or my out of school years was rough. And I went through really hard times, hard knocks that I'd call it now. I didn't think of it being hard knocks back then. I just thought it was part of life. But I went through a lot of struggles. And I remember one moment, I don't know what, I do know what brought that up to that level, is because I started changing perception, changing ideas, changing thought process.
How old were you about at that?
23, 24 years old.
Okay. So you'd been in this pattern for a long time, and then something at 23 and 24. Tell me more about that.
And the reason why that pattern was the time frame of when I wanted to switch gears or to start thinking a different thought is because no matter how much I denied, that there wasn't a savior, that the Holy Ghost isn't real, this church is a cult, I would get glimpses of this warm feeling come across my body at moments in my life. Being from a young age at 4 years old, 6 years old, I remember this, that I get these warm feelings, but I dismiss it very, very quickly. And it always was in my blood. It was always there around me. I never had these little ahas where I'd have it from family home meeting or church or testimony meeting like I have now. I had these little glimpses of a feeling I could never explain. And so working up to that 24, 25-year-old mark, I started getting those more, and I started searching for that feeling. I didn't know what it was, but I started searching for it. And I started searching for it without even thinking about it, because my mind was so empty that all these worldly things that I've been filling with for the last 10 years, 17 to 24, so 8 years, was it wasn't filling anymore. Didn't matter how many bars I went to, didn't matter how many drinks I had, doesn't matter how many girlfriends I had or dates that I went on, it was just being empty. I was coming home and I was being alone. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way of being alone, but I was absolutely 100% alone. Here I had just 10 or 15 friends around me. And I got this girl that is home with me in my apartment. And I'm feeling lonelier than I've ever felt in my life. And I didn't understand it. And so I was in that kind of that stage of trying to figure out things, to try to figure out what am I feeling? Why is this happening to me? It doesn't make any sense. Here I am, my whole life as a kid, a teenager, digging my heels in to suggestions and ideas that people wanted me to do something different. And I'm going, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm going to fight against it. Now nobody's saying anything to me. I'm on my own mission and I'm not happy. I'm going, this doesn't make any sense because I'm living my life the way I want it to live.
Because you believe that if you could do whatever you wanted to do, you would be happy.
Yes, absolutely. And then the next thing I know that I'm still not happy. And so 24, 25, I started that journey. I was in Oregon and I started thinking about it. I'd come home every once in a while. My brother Pete would make these comments, and it was the same comment. If you want to find true joy, get on your knees and pray. That's the farthest thing I'm going to do at that time. This is the farthest thing that I'm going to do. Well, that happened for 2 or 3 years. Went from Oregon to California, back to Oregon, went to Idaho, and here I am in Utah, living with a bunch of guys in an apartment complex. And the same thing that I've always done for the last 4 or 5 years, I had going on. Had a lot of friends, had a lot of girlfriends, had everything all lined up for the weekend. In fact, and to rewind a little bit, I just mentioned to you I was a contractor. And I think this really truly had something to do with it. But I was working on an LDS church at the time, and I was working for a contractor because that's what I started out as in framing. And I worked for a company that was very, very religious. At least the guy was. You didn't have to have the LDS background to work for him, but he was very, very religious. And I remember to work for him and to get the money that I wanted to get for that job, I had to, I participated. I felt like it was something I wanted to do, and I wanted to be able to, and I love building stuff. And so I got an opportunity to start building churches. But before every church he would ask to say a prayer and whatever. Didn't ever pay any attention to him, but I think I was paying attention to him because something was bringing this little feeling that I was explaining to you in to my space. Well, now to fast forward what I was just talking about is I am at this apartment complex. It's in Ogden. I've got all these things that are happening Friday night, and I canceled all of them. And I am also the one that is planner. I'm the planner. I'm the one that does all of it because it's got to be my way or I'm going to kick against it. So I planned the whole event. I knew what bar I was going to. I knew what everything I was doing. And I turned my phone off and I set it down on the bed and I went up to the church. And I don't know why I left my phone at the apartment. I still haven't understand that or figured that out. But I went there to make sure that that place was locked. It was up in the wrong part of town. It was in a little farther in Ogden than you want to be into. Ogden has its good places and bad places. And I went up there. I checked all the doors. And there's this little thought process that came across my mind. It wasn't my voice. It said, you need to check all the doors again. So I went around the whole building again, and one of the doors were open. That's kind of strange. So I walked inside, and now I've got a flashlight. Don't have my phone, got my flashlight, and I'm looking to find out who's in my building. The door's unlocked. Something has got me up there looking at it, and I went around, checked them all, and now the door's unlocked a second time. That is very strange. I'm going to find this person.
So that door was locked the first time, and then when you went around the second time, it was unlocked.
Yeah.
Wow.
I walked around. I'm shining in all the rooms. I'm shining in all the areas that I know someone could hide at. Went up on the mezzanine. The church is very, very designed how they do their churches, but they've got all the mechanical gear up on top of the mezzanine. So there's a big, huge platform, 10 feet wide, as long as the building is, you can walk around. So I walked the whole building. And I walked the whole downstairs, walked upstairs in the mezzanine, got down. I couldn't find that person. I'm getting ready to go out the door, and something again comes across my mind. Did you check all the rooms? You need to walk around again and check all the rooms. So I did. And as I'm walking around, and now I know what rooms they are. And before that, I got to even go backwards a little bit forward again, which is so cool right now, is because the spirit is coming into my existence all the time, everywhere around me. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm starting to think and hear these little feelings I'm getting. I'm starting to pay attention to them. I'm working for a contractor that prays every day. I'm working for a church that the state president comes weekly to walk my buildings because I'm a project manager and he prays. And I got all these opportunities to have these kind of things happen to me that's bringing the spirit in. And I didn't even recognize it. So fast forward and back up to where I was at. I was walking around the building and I walked to, because it's an area that we always met as a group, because this church that I'm walking around is almost finished. I'm almost ready to turn the keys over to the stake president back at that time to be able to give it to the ward that's going to use this building. I knew what that room was because we sat there for the latter part of the months talking about closeout punch list items. I know what room that was. It was the stake president's office. And I'm walking up past it, and my thought comes across and says, you need to go in there and find this guy. So I walk in. And then the spirit covered me, just like water, pouring a bucket of water off me. And the only thing that I kept thinking about that minute is you need to get on your hands and pray, or your knees and pray. You need to get on your knees and pray. You need to get on your knees and pray. And I didn't ask any questions. That's what I did. Is this feeling I've never felt? I felt it, but I've never felt it like I felt now. And I remember shouting to the heavens, just looking up, raising my hands, not folding my arms like I'd been taught as a little boy. And all I could muster the words is, help me. Help me. And I said that 3 times. And the 3rd time, I just broke down like a baby. And there was a person that is an image in my head right now. That was standing there in that room with those open arms. And that was the start of change. That was absolutely the start of change. I went home. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I called my friends. I says, I'm not doing this anymore. I blocked their numbers. That was the first start of change.
Wow.
I blocked their numbers. I completely changed the whole lifestyle. Where I started something that I never thought I'd ever do. I was so against it. That here I am, that I felt something for the first time in my life, so powerful that there's something out there that just moved me, moved my soul, moved my whole being. I knew that it was something, but I didn't know what to call it. I went home, talked to my brother Pete. He told me I told him about the experience, and he said, that's the Holy Ghost. And I've heard that name before, but we sat for an hour going over my experience, and he said, this is what's going to happen next, Jeff. When he planned out this, it was almost like he knew exactly what I was going to be fighting up against. You're going to go home, and 3 days later, you're going to say, hey, this isn't real. This is just a moment. I didn't really feel anything. This is stupid. I'm not going to do that. But when that happens, call me. So I had to go through that process of fighting still for that. It absolutely did.
It did.
It absolutely did.
Wow.
It went through my mind, and I started gravitating towards back my old lifestyle of getting involved with those guys again. I'm telling myself that this really truly didn't happen. I just had a meltdown. I had no idea why it even happened the way it did, but I had a meltdown. Well, fast forward in just a little bit. Went through that for about a month and a half. And I was a different character, different person. Because here I am as a project manager for this church, building this church. And every week we're having a stake president's meeting, and I'm turning this stake over to this church that I built over to the stake. And I just had this experience. Well, that next week he's there in the room. He has his punch list. We go through our duties of what we're doing. Around the table saying, this, Jeff, you got to do this. We got to finish this. It's like almost the punch list items. And we're all getting ready to leave because it's a normal meeting. It's an hour long. And he grabs my hand and says, Jeff, you need to stay. He says, okay, need to stay. He says, what happened to you? After everybody left, he asked me, what happened to you? What went on? Something's different about you.
Oh, wow.
Nothing's different about me. What do you mean? I didn't understand. I knew what he was talking about, but I don't understand how how he knew. I didn't know if there was cameras in the building or something. Because when he was acting everything, he knew exactly what was going on. I says, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, they're different. What's going on with you? And he had to kind of poke at it a little bit for me to share the story.
Because you didn't want to.
And he says, yeah, I was going back to my old pattern, my old ways, my old lifestyle.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, and he bored his testimony. And then all of a sudden the Spirit, out of nowhere, comes and does the same thing to me again. And I'm going, this is amazing. And so the second time of happening to me in a week and a half, I was hungry for that feeling. I love that feeling. I went on a soul search to find out how to get that feeling more. And then I blocked my friends. I let them back on my phone. I blocked them again. And they're as confused as I am, and I'm still going forward trying to figure out what to do. Well, he asked me to speak when that church got issued to the ward. And it wasn't a dedication, but they did something to it to bring that church into the ward. I don't think it was a dedication, but it was a prayer. He asked me to speak at that. And here I am, not even doing anything with the church at all. And I'm speaking up at the pulpit. And then a third time, the Spirit comes over me. And I tell my story about what I'm experiencing, about what is going on with the gospel. And then I let it lie. Or that was the last of my experiences for a while. I didn't do much. I didn't go back to that. I dabbled a little bit in it, but I didn't go back to it. I still kept smoking, still kept drinking, kept still doing something different than being obedient like I am now. And then all of a sudden, another experience happens. He's given me one thing about God, he is so patient.
Yeah.
So patient. He knows exactly what I need because he let me still be me. All this whole process, he has let me be me to where I fought against it, felt his spirit a little bit, felt his spirit. And then I'm fighting against it a little bit more by still doing the same things that I should, not the same things to that hard level, but I wasn't completely fully converted. And I had another experience. I had missionaries that were at my doorstep in Bountiful. I'm married at this time. I'm married to a girl that is a Catholic, that doesn't believe in the gospel at all. In fact, she was so adamant that I didn't want to, she says, if you're a Mormon, I don't want to marry you. And I says, I'm still as far as I can be with the church. After having 3 experiences like I did, I still made that comment, no, I'm going to marry you. I don't want anything to do with the church. And so I wasn't going to church. I wasn't doing any of that. I met her in a bar. I was back to my old comfortable habits that I used to be living, even though I had those experiences.
Yeah.
Well, the next thing I know, I have missionaries knocking on my doorstep. And this big 300-pound, 320-pound guy that used to play for BYU, that's why it's important, because he is just huge. He's a linebacker. He's one of the missionaries, and he's a ward missionary. He comes walking in and he stands in front of my TV because he knew I like sports, because we've made some kind of conversation as I'm walking to the house from job to job. And he knew I like sports, and he said, "You're not watching an NFL game today. During this time, I just feel that you need to be in church." He was that bold, but he wasn't that bold. He says, "I'm here." He tried to get me to go to church a couple of times and knocked on my door, and I pushed him off. Me and my wife are doing something, or I'm busy, or I'm doing dishes or whatever. But today he had a great idea, saying the time that I'm in church, I'm going to, and he says that he had some kind of prompting to go over to my house and stand in front of my TV. Wow. During the time that the church is happening, from 9 o'clock in the morning till noon, I'm not leaving this area, and you're not watching TV. And what's crazy about it is my kids let him in. I have no idea why, but it happened the first Sunday. And then the second Sunday, I'm brushing teeth. I wasn't in the area again, but it happened 3 Sundays in a row. And I am a sports fanatic. And I says, if you really want me to, what do I got to do to get you to where I can watch TV again? He says, you already know, I want you to go to church with me. Just one Sunday. That's all I'm asking you.
Wow.
He never heard my story, but he saw something that I didn't see in me. And so I went to church with him. I remember that day I was smoking a pack of cigarettes. I had cigarettes in my white shirt because I know better than that. I grew up in the church. I put my white shirt on. I put my Sunday clothes on.
You still got your little rebel going.
Yes, I haven't worn any Sunday stuff at all through the whole thing. I haven't been into church. I just kept my suit that I already had previous. I didn't, and even rewind back when I was touched by the Spirit in Ogden, I didn't get advanced for any calling. I didn't attend any church. I found all my stuff at a building that I was building, but then I left it behind. I felt it. I got moved by it, but then I quickly went back to what I wanted to do. And my brother Pete told me exactly what was going to happen. If you don't stay close to the Lord, you're going to leave, and that feeling is going to go away. Well, it did. So now I'm in Bountiful. This experience is happening. He saw something I didn't see in myself, and the next thing I know, I said, okay, fine, I'll go to church with you. If that's what it takes, I'll go to church one Sunday. Had my white shirt on. I had a cigarette pack. I remember being in my white shirt. I was doing what I wanted to do, everything I could do to make sure that I could convince myself that this really, truly was a moment. It wasn't real. It was a moment. I know what happened to me in Ogden. That was a moment. I know what happened when I was, being with my parents, when I feel the Spirit, that was a moment. These are momentary things. This isn't true. I'm going to prove to myself that it's not. And so I remember going to that first Sunday, and I went outside. I remember standing by the doors before I walked in, and I was smoking. I was doing it on purpose so the smoke would come inside the building where the doors are at.
Absolutely.
And there's people that are going back and forth because nobody's going to tell Jeff what to do. And I still remember the day that the bishop came around right before church started, and he put his arm around me. He says, brother, is there any way that you can just go down the building a little bit and smoke? It's starting to drift into our chapel. Could you at least give me that kind of respect? I remember him saying that word to me. Well, I know what I want. I know. Right now I'm 26, 27 years old, 28. I'm in my 30s probably. I don't know the exact age, but I'm older. I know what respect is. I want people to respect me.
Yeah.
So I did. I went down and I finished my cigarette and I came in the building, and those people showered me with love. It was amazing. And then the feeling came back again. And by that time, I surrendered. I said, I'm all in. This time I'm all in. I did completely what I didn't do the first time of coming back to him. I completely went all in. I started going to church every Sunday. Here I am. I've got a family. I've got a wife. She's not a member of the church. And I just started going to church. I said, this is what I'm going to do. And we started in Bountiful. Then I moved to West Valley. And then I moved to Harriman. But our life just started drifting apart. Because I'm starting to find a new life that I never lived before in my life because I was so invested in it. And the more I went to church and the more I went to Sunday school and the more I started getting involved with people that are involved in the church, I started having these experiences where they're incredible. They started they started bringing the Spirit in more into my life. And all of a sudden I'm having the Spirit around me constantly.
Big change.
And then I'm in Harriman. I'm doing things in Harriman. I'm going to church. My wife's not going to church, and I'm having these miracles that are happening. I'm having these miracles about the priesthood, that I am changing things right in front of me because I'm giving blessings. And so these aha moments that I'm having through my life are happening right in front of me that are tangible, that I can actually see. I can see that my wife's boils, my ex-wife's boils, just disappear off her body. Right in front of me. It's like somebody grabbed a magic marker and just wiped them away. And then I see my son, that he's drinking acetone because I'm building a new house at this time. This is another story that really gave me reassurance that this gospel is true. That the brick masons they had acetone in these water bottles to put acetone on the bricks so they could wash the grout off.
Right.
And my son at 4 years old drinks it and comes walking around the corner, foaming at the mouth, screaming. Well, that water's pink. And I knew exactly what it was because I'm a contractor. My wife's panicked like crazy. And the only thing I could do is say, yeah, let's calm down. Let's relax a little bit. Let me give him a blessing. That was the first thought that came to my mind at that moment because of the experiences I've had already, previous blessings. Let me give him a blessing. Screaming, foaming. Don't drink no water, nothing. That's what she wanted to do. Well, I come to find out after I talked to the doctor, that's the worst thing we could have done is gave him water. But I gave him a blessing and not one thing. I take him to the emergency room and not one thing happens to him. I gave him a priesthood blessing that things will be okay. And nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong to him at all. It is amazing. So I'm getting all these testimony building experiences that are saying this church is true. So my livelihood at 7, 8, 9 years old and not even knowing what the gospel is, to now fighting against it really, really hard, that my parents are telling me I've got to do it and nobody's going to tell me what to do, to becoming a rebel after I leave my house. And I get really, really far into drugs. I get far into drinking. I get far into everything that you can even think of. And now I'm having these experiences that are coming back, and I had to go through what's called the repentance process. Yeah. I had to use the atonement in my life. And I was absolutely being cleansed of all the things that I had done because I was feeling the Spirit so strongly. When I thought, man, I've got it. I have made it. I have made it to the pinnacle of life. Because I knew this whole transformation of what I used to have and how lonely I was and how much joy I had in my life. And I remember one Sunday walking down the road because I lived close to this church. And I remember that comment to myself, man, I've made it. I've got it. And I really believe that's when I started getting back prideful again, that I didn't even have in my life. That my play of prayer started becoming more complacent, more genuine, more, not genuine, but more generic, more the same.
Yeah. And it's easy to get to that place when things are easy and good. It is easy to get into that space.
And I started just being on autopilot. Yeah. Go to church, pay my tithing, read my scriptures, but it was all just half-heartedly. I just came in, I got this. I remember making that comment. And the next thing I know, Satan is working at me. 4 years of being in the church. 4, 5, 8 years being in the church. So when I got back into the church, I was a priest. And then I became an elder. And I stayed as an elder. And I got ordained an elder. And I did all these incredible things. And I saw all these blessings happen. I saw all this stuff, miracles happen right in front of my eyes. And then Satan's working at me, and I slipped again. And I slipped again so much that I had a calling that was really not high up in the church, but meant something. It was more than just a teacher for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I had duties to do, perform. And I was around the bishop weekly. I was involved with him pretty heavily. And here Satan's wasn't attacking me. My mind was wandering. And I slipped again. I slipped again after having that taste of joy, of complete joy. I slipped again. And I got excommunicated. High Council, they went around the room, all 12 of them. They didn't have 3 people that did that. They all went around after I told my story, and they all raised their hand and says, yeah, he needs to be excommunicated. And I didn't know what I didn't have. Because here I am having it. If it's hard to believe, I was still in the Spirit during that episode. It wasn't as strong, but it was enough to keep me going down that bad rabbit hole of sinful ideas to get me to go deeper to deeper to deeper till boom, it all happened. I divorced my wife that wasn't a member. I lost my children. I lost my house, and I lost my what comes to mind, my dedication to God, but I lost my discipleship. I was excommunicated. And when that happened, that moment when I was in front of the state conference, or not state conference, but in front of all the high councilmen, they all voted me, no, he needs to be excommunicated. Not one guy supported me. And these are all my friends. I am right now. Previous to that, I was on ward council. I was with the bishopric. I knew all these guys. I had talked with high councilmen during this 8-year venue. They had called me up and says, Brother Linhart, speak with me, because I had a testimony. They knew me by name. I knew their kids. How dare they raise their hand and say, Jeff no longer needs to be a member of the church because he doesn't care about God. Absolutely, I care about God. Well, your actions sure don't show that. That's what was going on in my mind. I was mad. I was furious.
Wow.
But I got excommunicated. That night, I was mad. How dare they do that? I did not do anything wrong. Talk about justification, justifying a sin. I remember going home. I remember getting complacent. I remember even going farther down the road of not wanting to go to church, not being what I've been doing for 8 years. This is too hard. You know what? This is so stupid to put myself through this. It is so hard to be good. It's so hard to be righteous. These rules that they got are a joke. I mean, all these things are running through my mind again. And I still remember, again, I just love how patient he is because he had to give me another wake-up call. Gave me another wake-up call. I was on a motorcycle, love motorcycles, and I went out wearing a helmet, and I got in a wreck. And he spared my life again. He saved my life again, and that woke me up.
Wow.
I felt the spirit in the hospital. I've got blood on the brain. I'm in intensive care or ICU. I come to 4 days later or whatever it was. And, you have some time to ponder when you're in a hospital. You can't move. You got everything sticking in you. And I was reflecting of all this stuff that's gone on in my life. And I found him again and asked for repentance. I remember being in that hospital. Why would you let this happen to me? I sat in so many meetings praying for my ex-wife to join the church, to be close to my heart, to have my kids be a celestial being with me, to be a family. I've done everything I can. I've turned my whole life over. I gave you all that I had. I went to church even though my wife said that she would disown me. And now you're going to disown me and tell me to go pound sand and excommunicate me? How dare you? I'm laying in bed screaming this out at night. How dare you? Nothing came from my mind but that warm sensation. That warm sensation again. And it was almost like somebody was holding me. And I've repented ever since for that, for acting out that way. And at that moment, I told myself that I want to be what everybody else is trying to force me to be. I want to become what he wants me to be. I want to be obedient. I want to know what obedient means.
Your heart truly changed.
He wrapped his arms around me so tightly that I felt it in a different love than I've ever felt before in my life. That at that moment, because I've made those comments before, I'm all in. I am absolutely all in. I've made that comment. But there's levels of what I found out, what all in means. In my all in, I had to go through that trial. I had to go through that trial, and go through that trial, go through that trial, because it was a false all in. But now that I'm all in, I don't think of one day, probably one day goes by, but I think of it often, how I acted in that hospital by myself, what comments I made. And I'm still, I feel like I've forgiven myself, but I want to prove myself. He knows what I'm capable of being. He knows what I'm capable of doing, but I got to prove myself. And I'm just proving myself day and after day after day after day that I'm truly, this time I'm all in. And I've had experiences come up in the last 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years that proves to me, are you all in? Are you really truly all in? And now I'm listening. Now I'm listening. I still remember the day when I got my endowments out. I became an elder and got my endowments out 15 years, 20 years ago in the story that I first started coming back and I became an elder. That I remember my mom turning to me and says, I never thought you'd ever make it. She had given up on me. The way she made it sound, she'd given up on me. But then I found out later, before she passed away, that there was not one day of her going to the temple that my name was not on the prayer roll, that I was not being prayed over. And that's something about prayer absolutely works. Absolutely works.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how it's changed my life.
I love it. I love it. If you could share one piece of encouragement or advice or something for those moms out there, like your mom, who are still going through watching their sons, watching their daughters, what would you share?
What is the number one characteristic of Christ, Cherie?
Love.
Love. Love. And what's the best example we can do to emulate him? Love. And the biggest thing we do as human beings, at least I do, Jeff Linhart, is I second guess that love. I put stipulations on that love. I put things in my mind that doesn't truly unconditionally love them. There are roadblocks that I'm building. If you do this, I will love you this much. And we got to strip all that away. Unconditional love means unconditional love. Doesn't mean at this point in time, and then when they act out, I'm going to give them a different kind of love. Unconditional love means it's really, truly unconditional. It means it doesn't matter where they're at or what they're doing. Love is the answer. And if there was somebody that was out of state or somebody that was not talking on the phone, I would not for 1 second let that stop you. I would get in a vehicle that works and I would drive exactly where they're at. And there's 2 things I would do. I would find them is number 1. And then number 2, I would hold them. And I'd hug them and I would hug them and I would hug them until they break down. Because everybody on this planet is searching for love.
Yeah. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story. You have an incredible story and insights. The great message I get from your story is to never assume that just because someone is making certain choices today does not mean they won't make different choices tomorrow. Love people where they're at, like your brother did with you, and pray for them, like your mom did. Be there for them no matter where they're at. Friends, thank you for joining us today. If you liked this podcast, please follow or subscribe, depending on what platform you're on. Also, please share this podcast with anyone who could benefit from these stories, truths, and insights. Join me again next time for another episode of Just Love Them.